Hi, I'm Sam, and there's no Annie, and welcome to half of Large Plays. Welcome to white bald guy in front of board games talking about board games, because I have no imagination, apparently. So Annie's not here because she broke ribs, so she can't really stand here for long lengths of time. She sat over there.
Hi!
She's still here, but she can't be here. Sorry. So with that in mind, I figured, what can I do by myself? And I know I said that I didn't want to do top 10s, because everyone does top 10s. But, a moment's notice, one guy by himself, I'll do a top 10. And I mean, this is going to be a way for you to properly gauge my tastes and how well you align with me and whatever. So it's not completely useless. I'm not completely... there is use in top 10s. I can recognise that much anyway. And I hope you'll recognise the use in my top 10. Oh no, I've made a laugh with a crack ribs. That's not good, is it? Anyway, I'm going to get straight in with top 10. Number 10? I'll start with number 10. That's the most obvious thing, isn't it? I'll just start with the number 10. Right, well, my number 10, as you saw from that nice little title card I did, hopefully, was Cthulhu Death May Die, which is a nice cooperative, almost dungeon crawler-esque type of dice rolling game based in the Cthulhu universe, which is, I mean, I like Cthulhu stuff. I like chucking dice after 20 years of Warhammer. It's just something I'm used to. The miniatures are great, which is not surprising coming from Come On. And the design by Eric Lang and Rob Davio is chef's kiss. It's a great game, and I really love it. I love the insanity track, how you get more powerful the further along you go, but if you push too hard, you'll end up dying, and that's not good. The cooperative element is quite fun. It's split into episodes and seasons, so there's always different puzzles that you can do, and they're all nice, self-contained, and they're remarkably different from one another as well, which really surprises me when I first played it. And I love the whole plug and play of it. So it's like you select a god, you select an episode, and you combine them, which means you can play different episodes with different gods, and it'd be a completely wildly different experience. Not to mention the myriad of characters that are available with all the different skills that they have, including their own personal skills and shared skills, which keeps complexity and asymmetry down a little bit, just to make it more approachable. Approachable is the word I was looking for there. That was my number 10, is Cthulhu Death May Die. I'm very much looking forward to seasons 3 and 4 that should be coming within the next 6 months or so, I guess. Annie's putting her thumbs up. She's obviously also very excited for that. Cthulhu Death May Die, my number 10. Number 9 is Shamans, which is, Annie's nodding her head at that one too. She loves it. Nice little small box game with a tug of war board in the middle, and you've got hidden roles, because most of the players around the table are the shamans who are trying to terraform these worlds, whereas there is always 1 to 2 shadows who are trying to thwart the efforts and bring the world into shadow or something. Thematics, but it's all done through trick taking. So it's like a cooperative, almost not quite cooperative, but a hidden traitor, hidden role, hidden traitor, trick taking, tug of war game. Usually it's Annie that struggles trying to describe games, and I'm there with the answers, but here I am it's got stuff in it. The art is gorgeous. I have to mention that straight off the bat because it's what attracted me in the first place. It's a nice small little package. It doesn't take up much table space or anything like that. I think what I love about it so much is how counterintuitive it feels. Like, I read through the rulebook multiple times and couldn't figure out how to play it. It was only once we actually started doing things with it that I was like, oh, and we must have played it, what, 20, 30 times by now? And I'm still, like, trying to wrap my head around the best way, strategically and tactically, of playing the game and getting a win out. Because there's so much going on. When you complete a set, you get to activate the ability for it, if you have the highest, or you do it out of suit. If you do it out of suit, then you raise suspicion that you're the shadow, which is no bueno. It's just, there's so much decision space in it. I did question whether it should be in my top 10. It has sat in my top 10 for a really long time, but the last game session of it I didn't particularly enjoy. So I do wonder whether it deserves being in the top 10, but I went with it anyway. That was my number 9. So in at number 8 is On Mars, which is a game I don't play nearly as often as I would like, really. It's a big, complicated Euro game by Vital Lacerda. And if you know Vital Lacerda, you know that his games are fairly intertwined and you have to think several steps ahead. I remember when we first got it, I was a little bit disappointed in its complexity. Like, I avoided Vital Lacerda for a long time because I was like, I don't know if I want to have that level of complex games to... I don't know, But we got it, and it wasn't all that... as much as heavy as it was all cracked out to be, and I was a little bit disappointed in that because I was after something heavy. And I think that's because it just appealed to the way my mind works. Like, no matter what game I'm sat down to play, I'm already planning several moves ahead and stringing actions together and trying to figure out the most efficient way to do things. And On Mars just spoke to that. So I guess it would be disingenuous to say that it's not a heavy game, because it is a heavy game. It's just not as heavy as I thought it was. And it was frustrating that I was put off from it because of the reputation it has for being such a heavyweight game. All of Lacerda's games, really. I was put off because it was made out to be this incomprehensible, heavy game that was so hard to get through. And it really wasn't. Like, for me and the way my mind processes things, it wasn't any different to any other Euro game, really. But I love it. It's great. I love... What do I love specifically about it? Well, again, as you'll see is a pattern on this entire top 10, the art is great. Like, I don't like games that are ugly. Like, it can be the best game in the world, but if it's ugly, it's not hitting my top 10. Every single game in this top 10, absolutely amazing artwork. And On Mars is no exception. Ian O'Toole absolutely bats it out of the park. It's great. But I also like how the link between the amount of buildings that you have built and which directly correlates to how many resources you can hold. And then there's the blueprints, which are like extra actions you can take if you have certain ways of triggering them. I also really love the Alien Invasion expansion, which I haven't played as much as I'd like. Because it's such a big, heavy game, we haven't managed to bring it to the game group fully yet. I've only played... We played one of the cooperative scenarios, and that was good fun. I think we beat it, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I was really interested in doing like the one versus many, where one of us is the alien. I like being the one in a one versus many, and so we did manage to try Alien Invasion once with me as the aliens, and that was so much fun. It was incredible, but we haven't managed to do that again because I'll need to have to teach the whole base game again to Neil so that we can do 3-on-1. But it's such a big, heavy game that's long. And there are other things that have been arriving, and yeah, On Mars is just getting straight to the point. On Mars is great. It's my number 8. Can you tell that I feel really uncomfortable without Annie here? Like, I'm having to do so much talking, it's crazy. I'm getting a bit lightheaded and everything. But number 7 is Ankh, which she wouldn't be very productive in anyway because she doesn't really like it.
Not that I don't like it.
It is. But I love Ankh. I really do. I'm actually gutted that I missed the Kickstarter, otherwise I would have had way more stuff for it. But I did, I managed to get everything, the core basics of what I wanted for it. So, I managed to get the core box, obviously. The stretch goals, the Pharaoh expansion, which changes the game up a bit, and the Pantheon expansion, which adds more gods. So I did manage to get everything at considerably higher cost than I would have done if I just backed it. But again, artwork, obviously, tick that off the list. Artwork, yeah, artwork is great, by Adrian Smith. I would probably say it's my favourite artwork I've seen of Adrian Smith's. I'm not too keen on his artwork he's done in other games, like especially not Rising Sun. Not overly keen on that. But in Ankh, it looks great. Even like the board, even though it's like 90% of the board is just desert, there's still somehow so much character and detail in it. Like, it's great. But what I really like about Ankh, particularly, is the conflict, where everyone involved, you go through region by region, and everyone involved in the conflict in that region selects a card from their hand that they're going to secretly play. But it's not always to necessarily win the conflict. It might be just to build a monument and earn some points that way, or it might be to intentionally lose the conflict, or it might just be to cause damage or to reduce the amount of followers they have in hopes. So I love that Ankh isn't always about winning. You can win the game by losing. And it's got such great table presence as well. And the merger mechanic is a little bit controversial, but I don't mind it at all. I think it works as a really unique and interesting sort of catch-up mechanism for those lagging behind. Even when I ended up merging, it didn't bother me. I was perfectly fine with it. Yeah, I think Ankh is a great game, and I just wish I could play it more with someone who actually enjoyed it more. But alas, here I am with it just behind my head, just sitting there, and I end up just kind of fawning after it. My number 7 was Ankh. At number 6 is Dune Imperium, which is a fairly new game. I mean, they're all fairly new games. I wouldn't say I have called the new, but there is definitely like a cut-off of games, a cut-off in years of games where beforehand I'm not too keen on them, and after I'm all over them. And Dune Imperium falls well within that. I haven't played, just caveat, I have not played Uprising, which is literally just being released steadily right now. I haven't played that. It does look very interesting though. I'm not sure I'm in a rush to get it, but it's on the list. It's on the list. Christmas is coming up. You never know. But Dune Imperium itself, I love deck building. Worker placement's pretty good, and Dune Imperium is nice and tight in that regard. I definitely vastly prefer it over its other comparative points of like Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is, I would say, is more of a resource management game going up tracks than it is deck building or worker placement. Or Endless Winter, which, yeah, I wouldn't say that was particularly. I mean, that's nice. That's got some nice deck building as well. But for me, Dune Imperium feels more like a deck builder than either of the other two. And the worker placement is really strong in it as well. It just does everything really strong. I particularly like the way it deals with conflicts, and so there is like quite high level of player interaction, even if it does feel fairly Euro-y. Like, it extends further than just workers blocking other workers, which isn't so much of an issue, especially with certain expansions, which can unlock ways of you going to places that people have already visited as well. But the conflicts, where it's all based on the amount of people you've put in, and again with expansions with like dreadnoughts or with uprising sandworms and stuff. That really spices things up as well. Spice Dune. But yeah, Dune Imperium. There isn't any particular thing I like about it. It's just a really nice, neat little package that just works in like from beginning to end, and the games are always close, always. Like, I feel like sometimes the skill gap between me and Annie is just a bit too big to make certain games enjoyable. I think that's why we don't play Ankh as much, because, sorry, I am just way better at Ankh than you are.
Yeah, no.
And so that means that you don't enjoy it so much. With Dune Imperium, we're like neck and neck the whole way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if our win rates come out at about 50-50 each. On that note, the 2-player is really good as well. It's just a simple deck where you flip over cards. It tells you what to do. It's so easy to run, and it doesn't compete as well, which we tried other 2-player versions of games. And when they earn points, it's just like, well, it turns into a cooperative game, and I didn't want to play a cooperative game. I wanted to play the game, but with the feeling of more players, and Dune Imperium does that perfectly, absolutely top notch. So that was my number 6, is Dune Imperium. And at number 5 is Scythe, which almost rhymes. 5 Scythe, 5 Scythe, 5 Scythe, 5 Scythe, 5 Scythe. There is a bit of a story to Scythe, and it's a indicative of why it's quite high up in my rankings, quite regularly and often. When we first started really getting into board games, Scythe was one of the ones on the list that I was intrigued by. But we watched some gameplays, and something about it just put me off. I'm not really sure what. I think while I do love the aesthetics of it now, I think at the time the aesthetics did put me off a little bit. But eventually, like, inundated with hype and good word, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just give it a try. I'll just tip my toes in with the base game, and we'll give it a go. So I bought it, we set it up, we played it, and it was so good that we then played it twice a day, every day, for 2 solid weeks. And it didn't take long before I was buying the metal coins and the upgraded resources and the expansions, and then we bought Rise of Fenris, and then we went through all of that. And it's such a good game. Like, I know it's one of those games that's now like so well regarded that it's actually cool to hate, but it is genuinely just so good, especially if you go into it with the right mindset that it's not a war game. Like, it is a sort of Euro-y, resourcey game, really, but with like a Cold War feel. Like, you know that you could engage in multiple combats, but it's so risky and so intensive on your engine and your resources that maybe you don't want to, but you could, and they could. So do you want to strike before they strike, or are you just going to hope that no one strikes anyone? Like, that's a really, really nice detail, and I actually appreciate that more than just a full-on war thing. But I love the action selection, especially as it's all with asymmetric factions with their own boards. So, everyone has the same 8 actions, but they're all combined in different ways, or they all give slightly different rewards, or cost slightly different amounts of resources and stuff like that. So that is really interesting. It really tickles my brain. I also love how the you don't actually have your resources. Resources go straight on the board, and if someone kicks you out of that space, they get to take the resources and spend it for you, which is a nice, like, especially seeing it's not a war game, it adds this really nice bit of, like, it gives a like element of threat. Like, there's a danger if you create too many resources too close to opponents who can reach you. Oh, it really, really ups the tension of, are they going to let me have this, or are they going to try and take it from me? Do they think the risk of what they're spending to take it from me is going to be worth taking it from me in the long run? I love the whole achievements thing, because then it can become quite a bit of a race. I am a bit torn though on the whole popularity aspect of it, because on one hand I love it, because it means that the person who gets the sixth achievement isn't necessarily the winner. It creates some uncertainty and requires people going through and figuring out who actually has one, which creates this nice little bit of tension. But also, the multipliers are so obvious. It's like anything that wants you to spend popularity is a bit like a. I'm not sure I want to do that because that's going to directly hamper my points, especially in the late game where you really want to pump up that popularity at the last moment so that you can maximize the amount of points you can get. Yeah. But yeah, Scythe is just a really solid game. It looks great, it plays great, it's really tight. There's plenty of tension and interaction, even though it's not a full-on war thing. Yeah, I love me some Scythe. I really do. I almost wish they did more expansions for it, but with Expeditions, maybe they're not going to do that. I don't know. I'd like to try Expeditions sooner rather than later, but I also know that's a completely different game. It's nothing like Scythe mechanically, but I'm still looking forward to it. That was my number 5, Scythe. Number 4 is the Arkham Horror card game, which telltale sign of how it's so high is it's probably my most played game of all time. Even including 20 years of Warhammer, Arkham Horror card game is probably still my most played game. And I can say that with confidence because I've played almost every campaign, and I think it's only Scarlet Keys that I haven't. And I've played all of them multiple times. At least twice, if not 3 times each. Some of them I even played 4 or 5 times each. That's 8, 9 campaigns with 8 scenarios each, played multiple times. That's easily over 200. I'm not doing the exact math now, but that's easily over 200 plays of Arkham, the card game. We haven't played it so much recently. It must have been a year or 18 months or so since we last played it. But that's not going to do anything to do with the game itself, even though it is getting very big and a little unwieldy. It's because we started deluxifying some of the components in it, and we didn't get enough, and then we couldn't find the rest of them to finish it, so then we only have half a set of stuff in deluxe components. So it just feels a bit off trying to use it with not enough components to actually play it. But I really enjoy it because I really loved games like Magic the Gathering and the Pokemon card game and Marvel Champions, and I just like having a deck that I have designed myself to work in a particular way, and then taking it through these trials to see how well it holds up, basically. And Arkham Horror does that really well, while also putting it in a cooperative way with and it uses scenario cards in a really interesting way to make a sort of map on the board. So you end up still going around this map, even though it's a card game, you still end up going around this map, being chased by the various Lovecraftian horrors. And then you've got resources that you spend on playing cards, which might be items, or it might be one-off things, or stuff like that. And you're going around picking up clues. And because there's so many different campaigns and scenarios, it's got a nice story element, but it's also, each scenario is a completely different puzzle to try and figure out and take on. So it really, really pushes the design of your character and your deck to its absolute limits. As a counterpoint, Marvel Champions just often devolves into doing as much damage as you can as quick as possible and trying to keep the threat back. Doesn't matter what kind of quirk the villain has, that is still the core loop all the time. Whereas in Arkham Horror, it constantly changes. It might be hoovering up clues, or it might be taking out enemies, or it might just be trying to escape, or any myriad of other things. One of the ones that always sticks out to me is the train in Dunwich Legacy, where you've got to get from one end to the other, but the carriages behind you keep getting picked up. And if you're in one of the carriages that gets picked up, the game instantly ends, and because it's a campaign-based thing, you can't go back and redo it. You're just on to the next one, whatever results they are. I think we did one session which was literally about 20 minutes, including setup, because we just got whisked away in the carriages. Completely unlike any other scenario in the whole lot. They really go out of their way with designing the Arkham scenarios, and that's great. But it has slipped in recent times just because there is so much content now, and we haven't played it in such a long time. It feels like a chore trying to get back into it again, but the desire is still there. I still want to go back. That's number 4, Arkham Horror the card game. I didn't mention this before, stupidly, but Arkham Horror the card game was one of the games that stood at my number 1 favourite of all time for a considerable amount of time. Which segues nicely into this one, and number 3 is Root, which also had quite a hefty period as my number 1 favourite game of all time. Again, I'll just go straight in with the artwork. Carl Ferrin's artwork is great. I love the screen printed meeples with absolutely filled with character and stuff. But with Root itself, it's just so good. Like the asymmetry is the big defining factor of Root, I find. But it's the positional nature of it, and the push and pull between the players, the political maneuvering above the table and negotiation, and because of the asymmetry means that every faction earns points at different rates, so there's a constant discussion around the table about who's actually winning, because it might not actually be the person who's got the most points at that given moment. Like the Woodland Alliance in particular can straight ahead, and it's like, wow, where did that even come from? Unless you know the factions really well, and you got one person going, yeah, look, I know the Woodland Alliance only have 5 points, but they're in a winning position. They're probably going to win unless we die. Get a move on. Which also leads to these really interesting moments of betrayal and backstabbery where you can sort of sow the seeds of dissent while also building yourself up and taking suspicion of yourself. Very high in player interaction, very high in asymmetry. There's a degree of luck in the dice rolls, but it's not like too bad. I don't feel like it's ever been. I don't think really it's ever been a negative for me. And the entire game group loves it. I do, however, feel that its complexity is a little overstated. Like, I often see people like completely baffled as to how do they explain it, how do they teach it to new players, how it's a game they never play unless it's with people who already know how to play the game, which I think is a shame, because really all you have to do is teach movement, cards, combat, and control of each region. That's it. Literally everything else is specific to each individual player and is described step by step on their board. Like, okay, if everyone approaches their first game wanting to be good at it and play it really well, yeah, it's going to be a horrific teach, because you're going to have to teach every little nuance about every little faction and point out every little thing that every person has to keep an eye on at all times. That's horrible. Don't do that. But you can just give like a high level overview, like, these are the cats. They start winning. They want to be building stuff. These are the birds. They work on a programming thing, so if you can screw over the programming, you'll slow them down. Or the vagabond, he's one guy who goes around and trades with you, but he's just one guy and he needs his items. Get rid of his items, he can't work on it anymore. You know, stuff like that. Like, you don't need to go super in depth. The player who's using them, also, like, you don't need to go super in depth with them, because as I said, it's all on the board. It's all on the board, how the faction works, step by step. Here's the options you can take. Here's the order you have to do them in. It's so, like, it's... For a game of its weight, it's so... I would argue it's actually really easy to get into. And simple, and... I don't know where this notion comes from of it being a difficult teach or hard to learn or whatever. It's actually a really easy game, as long as you go in with the understanding that you're not going to win. You may not even be competitive in your first game. As long as you go in to your first game just pressing buttons and exploring it and seeing what it does, which is fine for like me and my group, because that's how we learn every game, is just pressing buttons and seeing what happens. No one cares too much about the actual winning. So with Root, yeah, now that we're all a bit more familiar, we can get like way more cutthroat, and it's really good. I think one of the main reasons it's not stayed at number 1 is because balance can be really... it's very player dependent. The players have to keep themselves balanced to have the best experience out of it, but also it's maybe not always in the player's best interest to keep it balanced. They might want to tip the scales in their favour, which might actually bite them in the arse with someone else who also benefits from that balance weighting in their favour even more. And then like sometimes some of the games can just devolve into an absolute stomp because players aren't keeping up with the balance, which is a shame, but also I still thoroughly enjoy it from top to bottom. That was my number 3 is Root. And number 2 is Oath, and we're going to take another diversion for some more ranking stories. So basically the way I've done this list, I mean it's a bit late to mention this now, the way I've done this list is every month for the last 2.5 years I have done rankings. So I've ranked every game that I've ever played, but this list is based on the averages of all of that. I have taken certain games out, I've moved certain games around, and Oath is one game I had to move around. And that's because early on, we played it on TTS, and we enjoyed it, but because of the whole TTS nature, and because it was just two of us sort of just exploring how it works rather than actually playing it properly, it didn't blow my mind. So it ranked fairly lowly, and it ranked fairly low for a considerable amount of time until I actually physically bought it and we started playing it with a full group properly. And then it immediately shot up to number 1. But because of the way the averages work, it's probably never going to get anywhere near as high as it should do because of those early months where I was ranking it like way down. Not because it was bad, but because TTS is not the best. We weren't playing it the way designers intended it and stuff like that. I still enjoyed it, but it wasn't a top game. But it is now. So I've had to just finagle the averages a little bit to put it in its rightful spot, which I think is number 2. Number 2 is where Oath is. It is another game that had quite a long stint as my number 1 game of all time. And I think a big reason for that is it felt like Root Plus. Like it had everything I loved about Root, but more, and dialed up to 11. When it comes to like campaign-esque games, I am a bit either way really. Sometimes I like it, like in Arkham Horror, and other times I don't like it, like in like Sleeping Gods, say. Sometimes I just want to get on with the game, and I'd rather have an emergent storyline made by the players and what's actually happening in the game than one forced on you from a pre-written narrative. Like, that's where I stand with it. And that is Oath in a nutshell. It is, to a degree, I'd say it's more of a story-making game than it is a competitive game in a way. Like, some of the best moments have come out from people who not even trying to win, they're just trying to create a cool story out of it. And it's amazing how much story can come out of it, just like the cards. And at the time that one of the players kept playing Discord cards, and when they won, he was turned around, he was like, am I the bad guy? You know, like proper Peep Show moment. It wasn't Peep Show, it was Mitchell and Webb, wasn't it? Yeah. Just, it's so good. Like, the storytelling of Oath is great, but I also love how it's almost like, I love the closed economy of it. So like, you know, you play a card of a particular suit, you get money from the bank of the particular suit. And when you spend money on a card, it goes back to the bank of that card. So the money's constantly cycling in and out and going around. You rarely ever add to it or take away from it. It's just swapping hands and going in different places, which makes the kind of cards you're playing and using very important. Like, the advisors you keep will give you more coins if you give to their faction. But if you use it too much, the bank empties and there's nothing left to take from them. So you've got to diversify a little bit to take from other places. If other players are also using those places, then, I love the closed economy of it. I love there's degrees of area control. There's multiple win conditions, so every game feels different. And while it's not strictly a campaign game in that sense, like, I love how the world changes and evolves from game to game, and we haven't reset it because I just love seeing the changes and how it. Yeah, but Oath is absolutely fantastic game. It well deserved its spot on number 2. My only gripe is the dice roll to end the game. If the chances in a winning position, they roll a 6. That's game end. Like, sorry you didn't manage to do it quick enough. And the game itself can feel a little bit too tight to squeeze into those 5 rounds, 5 early rounds like that. Like, it's often I've just finished setting up, I'm ready to go, and then the chancellor rolls a 6. It's like, well, never mind then, I guess. That would be my only criticism of Oath, but in general, great game, love it. Like, I'm always willing to go back for more. Never fails to impress. And when it does fail to impress, we just play it again because it's not actually that long either, really. Yeah, I love Oath. Number 2, well deserved. At my number 1, which if you watch the channel should be no surprise. If you know me personally, I've probably talked about this game a lot. It should be no surprise. But my number 1 is Veiled Fate from IB Studios, which, I don't know, it took a while to get up there. It was one of my earliest Kickstarter backs, and I remember instantly being drawn into it. From the artwork to the hidden roles, the unique way that every player is every demigod. They can move whoever they want, anywhere they want. You're just completing these quests until you win, or you're gaining these points, and then everyone at the end reveals who they are to see, like, whether they won, whether they were the demi that won or not. So I love the second guessing of who are you really. Creates all these interesting moments of bluffing and betrayal, and it's not as popular as I feel it should be, because it was IB Studios' second ever game. I mean, they're getting bigger, they're getting traction now, and I'm definitely looking at the expansions they're going to release, especially if it brings more attention to Veiled Fate. But it is a game that I was super hyped for when it was in Kickstarter. I couldn't wait for it to arrive. It arrived, I played it, absolutely loved it straight out of the gate, and it's wormed its way all the way up to number 1, overtaking mainstays like Arkham Horror, Root and Oath, and I thought it never would. It is just such a solid game. Like, it's fairly quick, so you can usually fit in another game. There's so many like decision points trying to figure out. I mean, I think that's what it is. Like, whereas like a game on Mars appeals to my mental way of processing things, Veiled Fate does not, because it's almost like a social deduction game in board game form, really. And I suck at social things, so trying to figure out what colors everyone is, even though it's not like important to do so, it's still like a fun thing to try and figure out. Or and when they're bluffing who they are, and you're like, are you bluffing or are you? Oh, it's just. I love Veiled Fate so much. There is never a time where I will turn down Veiled Fate. I don't think I can't even, off the top of my head, think of a single criticism that I could levy against it. It is. Veiled Fate is my number 1 game of all time. I love it. Just top to bottom. Everything. Great. Absolute great game. Like, the artwork's great. The models are pretty great. I love how it makes me feel. The tension. I think that's it. I think it's the way it makes me feel. There's so much tension in every game. I'm always like, is my demi going to win? What if they touch my demi and they put it in a negative position? What am I going to do if that happens? How can I boost it up further? What if they're the demi that's currently winning? Can I bring that demi down? There's just so much going on in my head all the time while playing it. And it's I wouldn't say it's an exciting game, but it gets my heart racing, like, all the time. Veiled Fate, my number 1 game. What would a top 10 list be without some honourable mentions? Because there are a few games that I do want to just insert in here with a little asterisk, say maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. So the first one that comes to mind is Inish.
Yay!
So I mentioned how my top 10 is derived of averages from my monthly rankings. Unfortunately, just like Oath, Idish is another victim of that, because for so long I treated it as purely a 3+ player game, and there were always other 3+ player games that I wanted to get to the table. So, and the experiences I had with 3 players at the time weren't, like, it was one of our earliest games. It wasn't like the strongest experiences I'd had. It didn't like blow me away or anything. So it ranked fairly low for a really, 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 really long time. It was only when I decided that, you know what, we should try Inish again, and we should try it at 2 players. And it clicked. It like instantly, like, oh my god, this game is actually amazing. How have I been missing out on it this entire time? So it somewhat missed my top 10 from the averages, but in the regular monthly rankings, like, it hits top 10 all the time, constantly. Like, it's right out there with Scythe and Dune Imperium, right? Yeah, I don't know if you heard that. Annie says that she's good at it, which is another reason it's probably one I enjoy so much. Is like Dune Imperium, it's one that, like, we're probably 50-50 on it. I'm not a huge fan of card drafting in general, but the way Inish does it is really good, because it's not the main focus. Like, it's still fundamentally an area control game, and there's so few cards in the game, it becomes really it becomes a simpler task to just sort of pinpoint who's got what or where, and you're waiting to see certain cards come out, and it creates this nice little back and forth cat and mouse isn't really the right words for it, but yeah, I love that part of it. Another honourable mention I wanted to put out there was Sail, which I have really enjoyed. It's a cooperative trick-taking game which is punishingly hard. We have actually managed to try the expansions now, and it's still hard. We still can't do it, but something about it, like, it's such a unique design, like a cooperative 2-player trick-taking game. Like, how does that even work? And yet Sail does work. So as a result, it did enter my top 10 last month. I don't want to put it in this top 10 though, because I feel like it's too early. Like, it's only had 1 data set to add to the averages, so of course it's in the top 10 according to my averages, but I don't know, maybe a bit early. It depends how I feel about being punished so much. I do like winning games. I do like feeling like I have a chance at winning games, and if we can't get better at Sail, maybe it'll start going down in my estimations. But it's such a really nice design. I don't know how they managed to work it. A cooperative trick-taking 2-player. Like, it's so unique and interesting, and I do love Sail. My final honourable mention is Marvel Zombies. And the only reason I haven't put it in my top 10, I mean, besides the fact it didn't make my top 10 last month anyway, but also I do feel like it could. I do enjoy the fundamentals of the Zombicide system. There were just certain things about more traditional Zombicide that I didn't like. I didn't like the hunt the Molotov. I didn't like, the how it just evolved into searching for the right weapon and then getting on with it. Like, Marvel Zombies takes all that out and makes it far more like, zombies are coming, let's kill them, go, 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 go. Like, it strips out everything I didn't like about Zombicide and makes it better. Add to that Marvel characters, which I already have a better attachment to anyway. So, it's like, oh, I don't really care about Joe Bloggs taking out zombies with a katana. That's boring. But Hulk doing a Hulk smash, that instantly gets me going. It's good. Yeah, Marvel Zombies could well get in there. Like, I honestly, it might even replace Cthulhu Death May Die in that list. Like, it easily could. I just don't want to do it yet because it's still a bit early. We have played it a lot, like a lot, and we have dived into multiples of the expansions. There's so much content though that's going to keep us going for a long time, and that's another reason why I think it's worth mentioning here. Is I could be playing this a long time. I could play it a lot, like maybe not Arkham card game levels, but a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes the mainstay of my top 10 further on down the line. So I wanted to mention it. But yeah, that was my top 10. Technically you could say it was my top 13 with the extra 3 games, the extra 3 honourable mentions on the end, but hopefully that gives you a better idea of where I'm coming from in my opinions and experiences and my taste in games. Like, not every game can be a top 10 game. I would probably say my top 25 could all be top 10 games in that kind of sense, because they're all great, but you can only have 10 games in your top 10, can't you? I mean, evidenced by the fact that I've tried to squeeze 3 extra in honourable mentions. Like, there's more games I want to put in the top 10 and I want to talk about and I love. But hopefully it should give you a good enough idea of what I love most in games, the kind of games that tickle me most, and hopefully that should put my opinions into perspective for you to judge whether to take it with a grain of salt or fully jump in and agree with me, really. Hopefully, when Annie's better, she'll come and do her top 10. So it won't just be me on my lonesome going, here's the top 10, I'm the only one with the top 10, because she also has a top 10. I don't know how rigid it's going to be. It might just end up being her monthly top 10. But that's up to her, really. I look forward to hearing it as much as you do. Anyway, I was Sam. There's no Annie. And we are, well, I am half of Large Plays.
And on the other half.
Yeah, she is still here. Somehow. Bye.